Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today. My name is Ralph Yarusso. I am the chairman of the VetFran committee. The committee is part of the IFA and specifically the IFA Foundation. We create pathways for veterans and or their spouses to find employment and entrepreneurial opportunities in franchising. We do that by leveraging our relationships with franchisors, suppliers, and vendors, where they allow discounts and provide opportunities for veterans that have served in the military with the appropriate discharge papers, opportunities to take advantage of some of those discounts to invest and become franchisees. We typically find that veterans also become very good franchisees. They understand the model, they understand discipline, they understand by the numbers, if you will, and SOPs or standards of operations. So we're really excited about sharing some of those experiences today. I've been in franchising for about 38 years now, quite some time. Was actually able to use my veteran status coming out of the Air Force. I served 9 years. I flew C-141s in the Air Force, and used my military advantage to open up a Meineke store, even though I knew nothing about automotive, and probably still to this day, the last guy you want working on your car. But I learned how to run the franchise operation, which is what most franchisors do teach their franchisee candidates. I was a franchisee for 23 years, ended up owning 15 stores, did quite well with that, actually still own some of that real estate, moved on to become chief operating officer after my franchisee career, and became a franchisor, was chief operating officer with Meineke for 5 years, and then moved on to Full Speed Automotive with Grease Monkey and Speedy Oil Change, and lastly with Mayweather Boxing, also as chief operating officer. So I've been on multiple sides of the franchise model, if you will, both as a franchisee and a franchisor. So with that said, Patrick, I think I'll turn it back over to you to help facilitate.
Thank you so much, Ralph. So I'm Patrick Cooney. I'm Chief Development Officer of TC Services USA. We process corporate tax returns for businesses, and kind of how this came about in terms of my inclusion. I was at Franchise Leadership and Development Conference, having a conversation about someone had posed a question to me: what is the one tip you'd give me on tax credits in terms of value and so forth? And the low-hanging fruit there is get a veteran hiring initiative. So with that, someone from VetFran had overheard and said, "Hey, would I be willing to do a webinar and center that around tax time?" So we kind of thought this would be appropriate, and I'm really pleased to have this group of heroes on the panel here with us today, because we have veterans and everyone who has a concerted effort in those veteran hiring initiatives on the call here. So to Ralph's point, when we do have a franchisor that wants to process tax credits with us specifically on veterans, we do also have a discount available. So I don't want to make that the tenor of my participation. I really want to be able to highlight these guys. So Brandon, if you don't mind, introducing yourself, introducing who you're with, and then go ahead and pass that on to the next panelist, please.
Yeah, certainly. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. My name is Brandon Burke. I'm a veteran of the U.S. Army. I spent 6 years in the United States Army after college. Was part of the 3rd Infantry Division, the 123rd Signal Battalion, out of Fort Stewart, Georgia. So spent a lot of time in combat zones. And after the initial invasion during the Operation Iraqi Freedom, after having left Baghdad to spend a few more years left the U.S. Army as a captain, and have now been I've been on the franchisor side of the franchisor relationship. I joined my brother who had a restaurant business, had a couple of different restaurants, and wanted to grow and expand. So he and I together decided to expand the the business. So we're with a breakfast, brunch, and lunch restaurant called Scramblers. And for 19 years now, we've been growing and expanding our business. It's just a simple breakfast, brunch, lunch concept. We open at 6:30 in the morning and close at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And about 12, maybe 15 years ago, we decided to start to franchise the business, franchise the name, and continue to expand. So we did that. We've got 30 locations throughout the Midwest. We're expanding further south, and so I spent a lot of time developing my business by interviewing and bringing in and paying very close attention to potential franchisees and those that are interested. And of course, we find that whether I'm in the business with hiring general management or I'm looking for good franchisees, it's always directly related to a good correlation from U.S. veterans. So with that, I will, let's see, I'll move on to introduce the next participant, the next panelist. And I suppose that'd be maybe Adam Blake.
Okay. So I'm Adam Blake. I was in the United States Marine Corps, active duty from 1999 to 2004. Go back in Iraqi freedom days. I was deployed there for that for a bit. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I went to school using the GI Bill and got my degree and stumbled across a franchise called Enhanced Wood Refinishing. And that was in 2007 or 2005 is when we got started in that. Expanded in 2007. Since then, we've expanded. I have multiple locations of the wood refinishing business as well as a hem-dry carpet cleaning franchise. And so I'm kind of on the other side of the coin there as a franchisee operating and running these businesses. And I guess I'll pass it on to, see, Pete's the next one on the list there.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Pete Baldine. I'm president of Moran Family of Brands. We have, similar to Ralph, we're in the automotive sector. We have brands such as Mr. Transmission, Milex Complete Auto Care, Turbo Tint, and Altamir Automotive Outfitters. I am not a veteran. I certainly should have been. I would have done probably much better in my college career if I had gone in the military first. So one of the things that I definitely would do over again if I had the choice. I'm passionate about, I'm on the VetFran committee. I'm very passionate about bringing on veteran franchisees. I think they have some great characteristics that I'm sure we'll talk about later in terms of making good franchisees. I'm also very passionate about the rest of the veterans that are coming out that are too young and don't have enough money to be franchisees, but need to integrate back into civilization and into civilian life and need jobs. And so we have a very specific program about aggressively trying to hire veterans for our technician jobs that are available, but something that we have a lot of passion about here at Moran. And who's next? Brandon?
Nope.
Brandon, you went. I'm going to give it back to you, Patrick.
No worries. Thanks, Pete. Yep, we still have Jeff Hotz on with us here. Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff Hotz. Hotz.
Oh,
Everybody
my
says
apologies,
that.
Hotz.
That's okay, no problem. Like oats, that's what we say. Oats like oats. My name's Jeff Hotz. I'm a franchisee of a company called Homevestors of America. Been with Homevestors now for 10 years. Homevestors is the We Buy Ugly Houses folks. So I don't know if you've seen the billboards out there, huge billboards in certain markets. We're 1,200 locations nationwide, but I came into this thing I, like Adam there, I think we were in the Marine Corps at about the same time, 1998 to 2004. I joined the Marine Corps. Different job, military musician. I played the trumpet. I was drum major. Marine Corps has a rear area security. So the military band program actually is rear area security for whatever general you are attached to wherever you are. So we did that, which was great. You're not only carrying musical instruments, but also rifles and responsible to make sure that the general gets to where he needs to get to safely. So pretty cool job. Left the Marine Corps and I worked in real estate in Washington, D.C. And if you guys don't know what happened in real estate around 2007 or 2008, it didn't go well. And at that time, a whole bunch of my buddies were joining the Navy. And if you join the Marine Corps, there's a lot of people out there that have jumped services because you just pretty much sign paperwork and walk right in. And that's what happened. So I joined the Navy. I was a Navy sailor as a musician as well for, I think, 7 years. Continued to want to be in real estate. I saw Homevestors billboards and joined Homevestors in 2013 and then figured out, oh crap, I need to have health insurance. So I found a local Army reservist unit that's close by here in Columbus, Ohio. And so I've been in 3 services. I just retired from the Army Reserves in November, and that's 24 years total service. So in a whole variety of armed services. But I think, there's some great comments there relative to, I'm a high action guy. I like to keep moving. Real estate's a great industry for me. And what's really exceptional is just, I think, the mindset and the mentality that some of these, the veterans, I think we're trained and we're molded in some kind of path. And it works really well for franchising. So excited to be on the panel. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you, Jeff. Thank you so much. So as we get into it here, I first wanted to delve in, and I think, Pete, I'll ask you this first, and Ralph, feel free to chime in afterwards. In terms of a franchisor looking for that appropriate franchisee for your system, what speaks to you about a veteran and the skill sets that they already possess? So I know a lot of these self-help gurus right now will start with hey, you make your bed. I've heard that a couple different places. And I laugh because my grandfather was in the Navy. And when I was growing up, he was very adamant about the way I had to make my bed. So, the whole bounce in the quarter, it never bounced. I'm not that good, right? But I've noticed that with that, there's a lot of skill sets that do translate, right? The punctuality. Pete, what are you looking for in terms of a franchisee that would be the right fit for your system?
Yeah, Patrick. So the characteristics that I feel that veterans bring to the table that you can pretty much always count on, okay, is that they know how to follow a system. Okay, one of the challenges in franchising is when you get these guys who are real entrepreneurial and they come in and they want to try to reinvent things, and find a better way to do it. And your veterans don't do that. They're used to following a system. They're used to following orders. They're used to following the rules, right? They have a sense of discipline about them that is greater than the average person. They also have a sense of teamwork that is very important. And being in the military and working with their peers and the teamwork, there's also a community orientation that they have, which is, again, very important to your success in franchising, in that we want our franchisees to get very involved in the community and be the face of their business in that community. I'm going to give you one more that I would say is probably the most important, and I have candidates ask me this all the time about what makes a good franchisee and what makes a bad franchisee. Okay, and the thing that stands out in my mind from my 40 years of experience in franchising is personal accountability. Okay, the franchisees that are in the top tier take personal accountability for what they do. The ones that are in the bottom tier blame everything and everybody else for their problems when they end up being the biggest problem. Okay. And I find that veterans come with a strong sense of personal accountability.
Excellent point, Pete. Thank you so much. Now, Ralph, same thing to you. I know you've looked at this from many angles, but in terms of franchisor canvassing franchisees, what would stand out to you about a veteran more so than another applicant?
Certainly would echo all of the things that Pete mentioned as well. I can't agree with him more, but I think the one thing that I would touch base on, where there's a direct correlation, is the training. Veterans are required to take training. Everything they do every day, 24/7, has some sort of training initiative associated with it. Franchisors also provide a tremendous amount of training. I think one of the differences are, and when we talk about a skill set, is that a lot of franchisees, they have the training available to them, but they don't necessarily take it or take advantage of it. The franchisors don't necessarily always require it. Some do, but it's hard to enforce that, especially contractually. But I think veterans are more regimented in their thought process, and if they become a franchisee, then the training that's offered, they're more apt to take and pass and be more diligent in those processes. So I think that from a skill set standpoint, I think that the veterans are going to take better advantage or more advantage of the training that's offered by the franchisors.
So they're already coming in with a more polished skill set, and then the ability to further polish those skills they're going to develop within the franchise system.
Correct.
Excellent. Now I'm going to pose this to first to Brandon and to the rest of the veterans we have on here. Brandon, if you're going in, what would be that one skill that you feel most proud of that you took with you from your military experience, that if you were in that interview situation again, or if you're looking for someone to grant you a franchise unit, what would you tout about yourself that you took away from your military training and experience most?
All right, that's fair. I would tell you that without a doubt, the idea of a mission-oriented leadership was valuable to me, and definitely what I look for when I'm looking to hire general managers for one of my restaurants, or look for a franchisee who has interest in our concept. The idea is, I guess the best way I say it is, if I hire someone new that comes in, and I say, if you're at a staff level position, you spend a lot of time focused on personal accountability, and valuable as that is, the ability to then train and get other people to do their jobs as well as you is far more important, certainly in a franchise system. So I say all the time, the most valuable person to me in the company is the one that can get other people to do their job even better than they can do it. So I look for people that make others shine, because leadership, a lot of times the step toward leadership that is a difficult one to learn is one that I learned, way back while in the service. I often give the very brief anecdote that anytime you're on a field training exercise, right? In the middle of a field training exercise, I was a young lieutenant at the time, a platoon leader, and I had a mission, and mission is the only thing that gets repeated twice during an operations order. And so I give the mission out to the rest of the soldiers, and we go out during this field training exercise. And one of the cadre members, just as we engage with the enemy, one of the cadre members grabs me and pulls me aside. He said, "Okay, now you've been shot. Let's see what happens to your platoon." And of course, at the time, I believe leadership looked like, well, you're supposed to give direction and be assertive and be vocal. And if you're not there to do it, then what happens? Well, the value of that lesson was, what happens is everything that happened beforehand. And as I watched my soldiers, not be able to execute the mission, I learned the value of executing that mission and how critical that is. So in the franchise business now, I look at a potential franchisee And if they have a mission-oriented focus, a leadership skill, the ability to get other people to do their job even better than they can do it, then it makes the franchise system, it makes that particular operation run that much better because they're focused on the mission, not the individual.
Yeah, no, excellent point, Brendan. And I think, that age-old adage, a rising tide lifts all boats. And we see that often in athletics, right? You could be a great player, but you're really only one of the greatest if you're able to make that team around you greater. So I think absolutely you're going to see that in franchising as well. Adam, I'll pose the same question to you. So in terms of touting those skills that you've carried forward, what are those things that, as a franchisee, you feel, is able to really set them apart from another candidate and then, make them a success within that franchise system?
So I'm going to bring up two skill sets. First one, I would say just the discipline to keep going. As out in a franchise and trying to build that business, or in any entrepreneurial venture, there's good times and there's bad times. There's fires you need to put out. There's struggles. There's challenges that you hit on a daily, if not hourly basis. So having the discipline and the fortitude to stick with it and keep going and find those solutions. The second that I bring up is something that I look for as I'm hiring for technicians and employees, and that's problem solving ability. So it kind of keys into what Brandon was saying, that you need to have people that can solve those problems or work towards solving those problems when you're not in the office. In my case, I got, because we're doing wood refinishing and carpet cleaning, we're out in residential and commercial sites all the time. I can't be at all of them. At any given time, I got 12 trucks running out in different places. I can't be everywhere to solve everyone's problems. So being able to find people that can solve problems, can troubleshoot, and then maybe with a little bit of guidance and direction on the phone can find a solution to those issues is key. It's vital.
And we do see that in business, right? The ability to delegate and hold someone accountable for their performance, to, again, go towards that mission objective. Yeah, I absolutely think that would translate well. Jeff, I'll ask you as well. What do you find that in terms of that skill set really sets a franchise, a veteran apart as a franchisee in terms of being a great candidate?
Right. And I'll just say, franchisees, whether they're veterans or not, but I think veterans are kind of molded this way more than others. And we've said it already, but we need people that can do the work and put the efforts and energies in, and also can keep moving forward. Like I think is brought up before. If you have that ability, then you can work within a model we've already been able to see that, military gives you I didn't know how to buy houses. Like, let's be honest on that. I had no idea. Just like I think, who was that? Ralph that said that he doesn't know how to be a mechanic. And to this day, I mean, it's not like I'm an amazing contractor. It's just that I took what they gave me. I was able to do the work. I adapted. I overcame. I kept moving forward, even though when things get crazy, and all of those things that we do in the military day to day. And it's, I think, the biggest thing that shows success, either whether you're a vet franchise or not, that's the key to franchising in business.
Thanks, Jeff. So now circling back to that, and I think we kind of touched on it here, but some of those circumstances that may occur within military service, that ability to literally remain cool under fire and dealing with so many of those variables that could occur in the field. How do you think that relays? And again, I mean, what we sometimes think in business is a crisis actually is something easily solvable. And I think, when you're dealing with a veteran who has that wealth of experience to say, I've been in worse situations, if I was able to get out of that, this is really, something that is kind of easy. Ralph, if you don't mind, do you find that veterans within that franchise system are better at problem solving, or does that come as a natural ability from that training?
Yeah, I mean, again, I go back to the training component. You train for crisis every day when you're in the military. So it does translate well to business, whether it's a franchise model or not. And I think that one of the things that you learn in the military is how to prioritize, and say, okay, what's the mission? You noticed a recurring theme here. How many times have each one of us used the word mission? So what's the mission, and what do we need to accomplish and what crises are we presented with, and how are we going to continue on our mission and also address the issues that are at hand. So I think that being prepared and understanding how to prioritize each one of those aspects of whatever that situation is puts us at an advantage. Not to say that a lot of other folks aren't the same way, but I think in the military, we train for crisis all the time. I mean, every one of us here has worn chemical warfare suits, and you look at everybody's nodding. We've all been in that situation. We've all been in heated situations where you're thinking, oh my God, am I going to get out of this? South Yemen, I'm in the back of a C-141 looking down the barrel of an AK-47 with 50,000 pounds of Class A explosives behind me, thinking this country could get blown off the map if somebody pulls a trigger accidentally, and you just prioritize your mission and your day. You use common sense and you work through it.
And I'm sure that helps you put it in perspective, right? I mean, in terms of that's a real crisis. Whereas sometimes maybe someone missing a shift or something, or these other things that we come across in business is not as serious. But to that point, Pete, I'd like to ask you, when do you see within your system that ability does arise, that franchisees are able, based on that military experience, to do what some of us might think is a crisis, kind of be a more routine handling of that matter for them?
Patrick, that question in this part of the discussion brings me back to a situation that I encountered many years ago with a woman that I worked with and who was married to a guy who was a Vietnam veteran. And she kept telling me about trouble that this guy was having at work, having trouble relating to his boss and things like that. And to make a long story short, as I dug deeper into it, and I happened to go over to their house one day, and it all got put in perspective. She had put up a bunch of articles that he didn't want her to put up on the wall in one of the rooms, and but she was proud of him and she put it up anyway. And he happened to be a Huey helicopter pilot that saved 3 different battalions in Vietnam. And the issue that he was having at work was he had a boss who had read a couple of military books and related everything to this is like a war, this is a life and death situation. And this guy had been in real life and death situations. He had been in war. And he just had so much trouble relating to this guy. And he'd say, no, this is not a life and death situation. We can solve the problem. But the guy was his boss was so into, relating to that they just couldn't, and the guy ended up leaving. They just couldn't connect, But that was such an interesting encounter for me, particularly when I saw what a hero this guy was and what he had accomplished in Vietnam and all the medals that he had. And it gave me a different perspective in terms of, that kind of work situation compared to a military situation.
Yep, absolutely. That's a great example, Pete. Thank you for sharing that, because I think, that is a common misnomer sometimes in terms of, what the perspective is from the veteran in terms of their ability to deal with it versus someone who does not have that background or experience trying to relay that in something that they can interpret or that they have a better understanding of. Brandon, I'll ask you, and this can be either your military service or within franchising your professional career. One of those circumstances that, if it was a real crisis, obviously that training got you through, or maybe one of those ones that on the business end, more easily and aptly handled by you, that maybe some of us others would have considered a crisis.
I don't know. I guess I'd have to think of a specific one, endeavor, but I would tell you, generally speaking, while we have a mission in what we do to take care of our guests in our restaurants, certainly every day in the restaurant industry, in the restaurant business. You've all seen it. You've all you go out to eat.
Things can look like a crisis when depending on your perspective, and they certainly are not in many cases. But what I do think is particularly valuable or noteworthy is the idea that veterans often come to the table not recognizing their own skill set, their own ability to apply what they know, what they've learned. Some of it can feel generic because it is it's leadership oriented, and it's oriented around the idea that if I learned to be a specific radio operator, and that's not what I work on or what I do in the franchise community or in my new business, then how does it apply? But the reality, of course, is, and we're all saying it, all veterans have gone through some of the rigors that are necessary, that when you have a conversation with someone that is a veteran, you recognize it. You know that they are, because they inherently have something unique that allows them to apply that general ability to stay calm under pressure, to triage appropriately, recognize things that are important and when and what's most important at any given time, to prioritize and then delegate appropriately. And as a result, most veterans that I know don't often pat themselves on the back and tout the fact that they have this great unique skill set, but they do have it, and it should be appreciated, and it is definitely valuable in any work environment, in the civilian sector, and certainly in the franchise community.
So absolutely. I mean, the ability to lead by example or provide that example, I think that helps, everyone else in the franchise system. So, if the veteran isn't getting frazzled by this, why am I? I think that's probably an excellent point there. Adam, I'll ask you the same thing in terms of that crisis that we may think is a crisis, but really isn't. What do you see in terms of the franchise, the veterans being able to stand out in the franchise space, and how they would deal with something like that?
I would say the big thing is being able to determine how much the level of crisis is, prioritization. Things coming in there, it's anything we deal with or I've dealt with in the office over the last decade or so is not the same as bullets flying. It's not. It doesn't get to that level. At times it may feel that way. But one thing that I try to keep in mind is most of my employees are not veterans. And so in some cases, they don't have that experience to draw upon to be able to classify, okay, how serious is this situation or not? They can perceive it as a life and death when it's really not. And so like Brandon was saying, providing that experience and that the model for them to say, okay, well, let's get into it and let's fix it and let's deal with it. It's not, blow it bigger out of proportion than what it is a valuable skill set that I think, most veterans get just in the training and so on.
Absolutely. I mean, being an example who is able to persevere kind of, shows the rest of the team that there is that light at the end of the tunnel for whatever that issue is. How many times do we hear that, scenarios in business are as important, or even using those euphemisms like life or death when it's really not applicable? I think being able to refer to someone who is grounded in terms of the importance of that issue and able to prioritize based on mission objectives and the stuff we're talking about today is absolutely crucial. Jeff, I'm going to ask you, but I'm going to ask you in a little different context. How would that play in terms of, given the musical component of your background and your experience, literally working in concert? How does that affect, veteran being able to work in concert literally, and then, as part of that team through these crises?
Well, I mean, even though I'm a musician, military also shares, we all share this common thing where, you know, in the military, the reason that we are wired the way we're wired is, has any of you in your military service ever gotten anything even remotely close to what you needed to be successful? No. I think the answer is no. I mean, how often we travel all over the place as a military band. How often, I could tell you, many different times we were left in Jamaica. We didn't have any flights somewhere else. You know, I found out once that we were traveling. We had 2 airplanes, 25 vehicles waiting for us. We're about 80 some people, gear in multiple other airplanes. And I found out midway that we only have half of the amount of housing that we need, right? And so the crazy part is, it's like when you look back at some of these situations we already have, I was probably 22 years old. You know, now it's up to me to figure out and like manage through the weeds on this stuff. And I think that's the thing, that we all share that commonality, no matter what service you've been, and I've seen it through my 3, and no matter what job you have, the military just does a really great job of leaving you hanging constantly, every single day. So it's like, I came into this, and I say right now, and I don't know if it's just a mantra, because there are situations where you're like, you know, the world is coming in on you. I mean, this week for me, the world has been coming in on me, but then you start thinking about these times in your life when you were in the military, and you're like, oh my God, I can accomplish anything. And I always say I thrive in crisis. Like, I love getting into crisis mode. And I don't know if that's something that was changed, or then I don't necessarily think I'm wired that way naturally. I think it's the military told me and showed me that you have to adapt and overcome. You have to, like, let's just use like live in the suck or whatever terminology we could come up with. Like, this is the thing, you have what you have a mission to accomplish, and you have to accomplish it. So I think no matter if it's, you talk about in concert and with the military, and I'll say a lot of this is directly related to, even outside of like within concert, and there's a lot of teamwork aspect there, but outside of that, it's just the reality of daily life in the military, and all the things that, just don't work, that you have to overcome to keep moving forward.
Excellent point. I mean, and we see that so much in franchising, right? Where someone plays one off note, but we are all able to carry the tune collectively. So that's actually absolutely a great example. Let me pose this next one to Ralph. Ralph, we've talked a lot in terms of the skill sets that would make someone a servant leader, and that concept of servant leadership. But how do you see that relays into, one, in the veteran's ability to work within that chain of command in the service, and then how does that carry over to the organizational flow chart, which is the franchise system?
Well, I think for starters, respect, knowing that the folks that have earned those positions of leadership have earned that respect. And I think that comes more naturally to those that have served. They automatically will, respect those decisions and those marching orders, if you will. I also think that, with respect to missions, we've talked a lot about the mission. Corporate goals are very similar. So there's a lot of parallel aspects to the mission and the goal of the corporate entity. So I think that when the leadership is in place, the goals are set, you get the marching orders, you continue moving forward and providing the support necessary, to accomplish that goal or that mission. One of the things I always like to talk about with respect to the Air Force is 310-ish thousand active service airmen in the Air Force, probably another 72,000 active reservists in the Air Force. So nearly 400,000 Air Force airmen, less than 2% actually fly. So, more than 98% provide support for the mission and for the goals. And when you look at the corporate aspect, we're not, we don't try to use the word corporate anymore in franchising. We like to use the word support center. It's no different from the military standpoint. You provide support to accomplish the mission. You provide support to accomplish the goals of the corporate entity. So I think that there's a direct correlation with respect to the echelon of command, the respect that the folks that are making the decisions have earned, and, being focused on the ultimate mission and what do we need to do to provide all of that support. And in our case, in franchising, it's to the franchisees. Everything we do as a franchisor is to provide support to our franchisees to make them more successful so they can accomplish their mission. So, I think that there's a direct correlation in the mission set forth by the military and the goals set forth by the franchisor. So probably a little long-winded, but.
No, that's spot on, Ralph. Excellent point. And Pete, I'm going to ask you this too. Now, Pete, when you see a veteran come into your franchise system, do you see that they are able to acclimate to that kind of, organizational flow chart as opposed to maybe someone who did not have that military experience? Are veterans less likely to question the decision-making of your management, or do you find, Pete, that nope, veterans will still pipe up, or do you see that they fall in line easier?
Pete, you're on mute.
Yep.
I think
Sorry,
that
had to unmute myself.
there you go, Pete. You're in.
I think, Patrick, that because of the systems orientation in franchising, that veterans are drawn to franchising. The discussions that I have with them in, through the, development process and the onboarding process and discovery days is that they all seem to repeat that I like working with a system. I like having a system to follow. It doesn't mean that based on their personality that they might not go off the chart every once in a while. But I think it comes natural to them from that military experience, and we find the same thing not just in terms of franchisees, but also in terms of veterans as employees. When we actively try to recruit veterans as employees, because being in automotive, if they've worked in the truck pool, they've worked as an aircraft mechanic, they've worked on heavy equipment, they're perfect for us, and they'll come in and they'll do it our way, they'll follow the system. So everything, all the fundamentals are there to make it work, whether it's as a franchisee or as an employee.
So absolutely, and I think from what I'm hearing is that is an easily transferable skill set. That there's things literally learned. Obviously, besides being punctual, being accountable, some of those like things we've talked about conceptually, but actually being able to turn the wrench, understand where this gear goes to that piece of the motor. So yeah, I can absolutely see that playing a great deal of success in their ability to work within a franchise system. Yes, there's that familiarity, but if also my skill set allows me to, if I am an employee, be promoted, maybe at some point I will become a franchisee. I think all of that absolutely lends itself to greater success. Brandon, I'll ask you the same question. Now, when you're bringing on a veteran, do you find that they are able to easily climb that chain of command or fall in line to where they're supposed to be with their duties, more so than the population at large?
Yes, they are more so than the population at large. The biggest translation is the transfer of standard operating procedures to the systems that the franchisor has designed. They do have a profound, as was mentioned earlier, a profound respect for those that have developed the systems, right? And when I hire new management, I tell them there's three things that really will make you successful. You hire the right people, you train them the right way, and then you set the systems in place so that everyone knows how to accomplish the mission without you standing there to make sure that it happens, right? Hire the right people, train them the right way, and set the systems in place. Well, setting the systems in place just means standard operating procedures. And everyone who's been in the military understands a standard operating procedure doesn't exist unless it's written down. And that's what franchising is. As a franchisor, my design is lots and lots of experience to write down what I know works best. This is the system that works best. We've tried it 100 different ways, and my experience tells me this is what works best. So we're going to write it down and say this is the way to do it. And veterans have a tendency to appreciate that system because they see it as a standard operating procedure and know that from experience. So it is very helpful. And those that are not, obviously personalities are fluctuate, but those that are not, sometimes we in the franchise community we tease, we call it, it's like herding cats, because I'll go into a franchise restaurant and find that they want to try something different. They're doing something they're not supposed to be doing. Hey, we're not selling hot dogs here at Scramblers. We're a breakfast place. So I know you want to try that, but there's a system if you want to implement it. And we do a lot of that. But I find that I don't need to if I brought in a franchisee who is a veteran, because they respect the system, even if not the years and years of experience that it took to develop it. They respect the idea that the system's there for a reason, and that's very valuable.
Great point, Brandon. Thank you. Adam, I'll pose the same to you. Do you see a quicker ramp up in terms of success within that franchise system because of the ability to work previously within a chain of command?
I think so. I've seen that with other franchisees starting in different areas of the country and so on with enhances and working with the network. I've had the privilege to be on some of the advisory councils to our franchisors, so I've seen some of that growth, and I do think that there is definitely an advantage there. But one thing that crossed my mind as Brandon was talking there too is we're talking about the ability to jump into these SOPs or standard operating procedures and run with them and stick with them, and that is absolutely true. However, there is still a lot of, because like Jeff was saying, not having the right gear or the right logistics in place and so on, there's a lot of adaptation that happens. And I think veterans do have that skill set to operate within that standard procedures, but say, hey, wait a minute, something does work better. But then instead of just going off on a tangent and doing their own things, still being able to operate within the system to better the system and find a better path and change those processes and procedures over proving that there is a better way or a change there. So I think in any sort of business or any sort of management, you have to be open to that. If like in my case, if I wasn't open to suggestions and some experimentation from ideas from my employees, I think that my business wouldn't be nearly as well off as it is. I think there's been a lot of things over the years that we've been able to implement and even implement within the entire franchise network, running that up to the franchise or chain of command, however you want to call it, and to the R&D teams there, and they do some work with it and say, hey, yeah, this is a better way. Let's change up procedures. So I think being able to operate within those procedures, to some of what I was saying, is definitely a skill set that comes from veterans and in there, but there is still that room for growth that is in place.
So yeah, the ability to work within that franchise system, but the adaptability to still stay mission oriented and maybe still find a better way or an ad hoc method to get through and still be mission oriented. That's an excellent point, Adam.
Yep.
Thank you. Jeff, same question. Do you find within that chain of command that the ramp up period is quicker for veterans, or they're just more successful, right, based off that skill set?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So the one thing I didn't say before, I didn't mention it, but I'm also a development agent. We have franchisees that become development agents where I'm working, I have my own franchise that I have the same problems that other franchises have, and I'm kind of coach and support and mentor franchisees throughout the Midwest here. And I see what's really interesting, and I think some of you have already talked about it, but franchising is within a box and within a framework, which is what we do within the military. But there is the ability, and I see veteran franchisees do it so well, as they come in and they see what the guidance is. And then we're all individually owned and operated franchisees. And then they create what makes sense with them, and maybe implementing some efficiencies and creating, within Homevestors, we don't just buy and sell a house. There's 5 different exit strategies we have, from literally no risk at all to sling a contract. You have a house under contract, you can sell the contract all the way up to the most risky thing is rental investment, but that's like generational wealth. So that's what the ultimate goal for all of us. And it's kind of interesting how franchisees use that mix. But what's great about a veteran franchise is their ability to seek through, see what works for them. I always say, like, make the main point, because that's something that the Marine Corps always said. And I always, I think when you're younger, you're like, what the hell does that mean? But over time, you kind of figure out, like, okay, make the main point the main point. The main point is always shifting. But I think veteran franchisees, maybe I'm speaking to you, some of you out there by saying that, because you understand you have this model of where you want to go. It may change and adjust, but they do have an exceptional ability to move through the weeds there and perform.
And Jeff, that's a great point in terms of, being able to accommodate and work through those different tiered services. The fact that they are able to start and then work up through that franchise system to say, okay, now I am at that point where I want to do rental investments to your example. So that's great. So guys, we do have a question here, and I want to pose it while we still have time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So thank you all for the panelists for setting aside the time today. But we do have a comment or a question here from Jim Hatch. It says, I'm director of partnership for the Purple Heart Foundation and have 388,000 Facebook followers, 200,000 emails, and he was looking to partner with franchises that support the veterans' mindset and lifestyle. How can a military profit partner bring value to make a difference and teach more people how to fish? Anyone care to respond to that with a good answer?
I'll jump right in. It starts with communicating and reciprocity on our websites. I would encourage everyone on the call today to visit vetfran.org to learn more about what VetFran does and how you can become involved. We would love to, we work with Blue Star Families, Student Veterans of America, Zero Mills, Hiring Our Heroes. So we've got relationships with a lot of folks like that. That's a lot of followers, and I can assure you a lot of those followers are yearning for opportunities, and they can find them right here. Everyone on this call, I mean, look at, bottom line is, we do what we do because we're passionate about providing opportunities for veterans, but we're also selfish. We're trying to grow our business at the same time. And I hate to say it like that, but we know that these veterans can make, good franchisees. And if we can find a pathway to get them in that role, it's a win-win for everyone. So sharing website information, communicating to our constituents and their constituents is what it's all about.
That's great, Ralph. That is really a super positive synergy. And I think that in terms of, getting the involvement of veterans, that's a great way to do it. So I'm gonna wrap it up, guys, with one last question. And I'm pretty sure I'm gonna know the answer for most here in the franchise community. But I will tell you, I had an issue in terms of how I was going to pose this question. So the conceptual part of it is, do you find that, and I wanted to say brotherhood, but then that's not being respectful to the women who've served in armed forces. Then I kind of thought, went through the source of my mind and said, let me say camaraderie, but I don't know if I want to say comrade in front of any of you, right? So that concept, right? The togetherness that's in military service, do you find that relayed specifically within the franchise industry? And I can attest to that just in terms of my experience, franchise family, everyone really does work cooperatively and tries to see everyone's best interest at heart. But does anyone want to speak to that concept about how they feel that, their insert your word here has translated in their ability to work cooperatively?
I would, if it's okay. I'm going to say, I left the military and you're leaving a family, and like you said, there's nothing that's ever going to replace that. Those are people that whether you went through, whether boot camp or war or whatever situation, or just lived in the barracks with somebody and went through everything that you went through, there's a brotherhood and sisterhood that happens there. So nothing's going to replace that. But, as far as like what I found within the franchise system over here, Homevestors may be a little bit different, but maybe not. I'm not entirely sure. But even from a local level within Columbus, we have about 15 franchisees here. We constantly to get together. You had said before, rising tides lifts all ships, and that's like what we constantly look towards. We need support and assistance throughout day in and day out for everything that we do. And I can't find that other than my Homevestors brothers and sisters around me. So we work really well together. And I think it's really great when you can find that company. I'm pretty sure all you guys are, that you can walk right into and continue to have that family, at least some part of that family environment that you had while you were in the service. There are certainly franchise here I would absolutely go to war with because I trust them wholeheartedly that much.
Excellent point. Anyone else have a comment they'd like to share in terms of, what we translate to the franchise family?
Say the same thing and echo that. It's no offense to the franchisors, but you don't get the camaraderie from the franchisors. It's the franchisees to the franchisees, and the network we're able to build and working together. And in a lot of cases, there's in my case, it's a couple times a week talking to a different franchisee, working through problems, something they've seen before that I'm running into, or vice versa. There's a lot of that happens, and even to the point of employees that you're hiring and working. You can build some camaraderie with employees, but I think we've all seen that, they're there for a job. They just don't have the same investment into the company as you do as a franchise owner. And so, building that camaraderie between the other owner operators is definitely something that it happens in most franchises.
Anybody else to comment?
I'd like
Ralph,
to
yeah,
jump
please.
in and just maybe counter Adam a little bit, because there actually is quite a bit of camaraderie on the VetFran committee. And, these are mostly franchisors. There are some suppliers and vendors as well. But, we work hand in hand together. We get each other, and we do go to battle with each, as teammates, and whatever initiatives are out there that the IFA is facing. So I think that that's a great place. It's difficult for franchisors, just that are out there working in silos to have that camaraderie. But at VetFran, we're brought together, and the IFA does a terrific job of bringing us together, working together. There's a lot of jokes back and forth, we talk slowly for the Marines and all of that good stuff, but we have a lot of fun. We have a lot of camaraderie, and we do work really, really well together. And I think that that's a good place for folks to, share those experiences. And there's a lot of people that are really passionate that are on the committee that aren't even veterans. Pete's a great example of that. He's very passionate about veterans. His family served. He didn't get to serve, but but we have probably more people on the committee, on the VetFran committee, that are not veterans than are. So, but we still share that camaraderie quite a bit, on that committee. So, I encourage people to get more involved with it.
Anybody else have a last word on that?
I would just simply say that there are a few things in the civilian sector that transfer as well from the military than the franchise community. And the primary reason for that, I think, is that franchising means you have a lot of independence, a lot of entrepreneur leadership type approach to your business. It is your business. It's one that you'll take pride in, you'll do on your own, and yet you do it with a support system. You do it with a community outside of it that you can rely on, and it makes for a very smooth and easier transition from the military into the civilian world, because you're used to the idea of, I have to accomplish the mission, I have to do it on my own if necessary, but I know I have the support of a brotherhood, for lack of a better term, of a solid community behind me. And that's the beauty of franchise.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for that feedback. I definitely echo the sentiment in terms of, the franchise space, really being close knit and helpful like that. And that's why I was curious to find out your experiences in terms of if you see that similarities. To that point, I want to thank my friends at 919 Marketing for helping me to, wrangle everyone in today and get everyone on the call kind of last minute. I think that again speaks to that franchise family and how we're all willing to help each other move towards that common goal. So if you haven't already, please visit vetfran.org. please participate in any way that you can. I think that you're going to find it rewarding than more than just that, financial ability that veterans will have to produce greatness. It's also all those other intangibles we talked about today that'll really reap benefits exponentially for years moving forward. So guys, thank you all for your time. Thank you for your service. Pete, thank you for hiring. It's been really great to speak with all of you.